Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Chip Nellinger, Blue Reef Agri-Marketing. We're seeing mixed trade in both grain and livestock futures right now. So corn and soybeans under a little pressure, wheat to the plus side following the WASDE report, but we kind of looked that way going into it. Let's break this down a little bit, Chip. On corn, ending stocks were left unchanged on a domestic balance sheet, but we saw just a slight revision in South American numbers, but not a lot, right?
Not a lot. And, I think the take home to me is that prior to this report, beans were down 10, 11 cents. Corn was down worse than it is after the release of this report. So the reaction so far has been pretty muted. I guess if anything, maybe wheat's the most bearish thing out there, and it's
Yeah.
it's actually higher. So I think really we did a good job digesting this. The South American numbers may be a little bit disappointing to the market, but I think the market knows and realizes that the USDA isn't the leader when it comes to trying to estimate Southern Hemisphere crops. We do have CONAB out next Tuesday morning, and so that honestly, in my opinion, is going to be more important than what this USDA report told us today. And I think the close today is going to be really important to see what we do. If we shrug this off and close higher, it may spur some further fun short covering across the entire grain sector.
Yeah. Specifically on the South American numbers, I can run those down. Brazil corn, 124 million metric tons. That was left unchanged. We actually saw a million metric ton increase on corn in Argentina. Soybeans, Brazil came in at just a million metric tons lower than last month at 155, and Argentina was left unchanged. I would say the Brazil numbers, though, do have to be a disappointment just because we are still with USDA well above the CONAB figures. We were worried about that going into this report, right? Talk about why USDA continues to slow play that.
Yeah, I just think historically, the USDA, when it comes to other world numbers, um, they're reactionary, right? And they're, not usually the ones that are leading the way in the cuts. And so I think there's still a lot of questions out there. You look at some of the private estimates that are still here recently out of the Southern Hemisphere, out of Brazil, especially. You're talking major differences on both corn and bean estimates. So I think the market's a little bit confused, but I think they're going to take their cue for sure from CONAB, this month and next month, more so than the USDA. And I think that's just, part of the issue is USDA doesn't have boots on the ground necessarily out there doing, crop estimates in other parts of the world. And so, they're slower to bring those numbers down historically. And so, it appears that the previous month, the market gave a little more emphasis on the USDA than maybe what it deserved, and maybe now they're back to a little bit of normalcy, understanding that the USDA is more reactionary than predictive in their world estimates.
It was disappointing not to see more follow through in corn and soybeans after closing May contracts above those 20-day moving averages yesterday. But like you said, we don't have the close in. If we could close above those levels, have a higher weekly close, is it likely the shorts will continue to be covered by the funds, maybe going into the acreage report at the end of the month or not?
Yeah, I do, and I think I don't want to put too much overemphasis in today's close, but to your point, I think it is important, right? We got this report out of the way. We had a dip going into this report. It's kind of what you need to see, especially in beans. When we're double digits lower early. If we can, and this is a big if we can close up towards the upper end of the range or higher on the day in corn and say above yesterday's highs, I'm sorry, in beans and above yesterday's highs in corn, it likely is going to be enough to spur some additional fund short covering. And there's a lot of unknowns out there. We still don't know about the size of the southern hemisphere crops. A lot of weather uncertainty out there. The acreage report, as you mentioned, stocks report also coming out the end of the month here, and then our spring weather and our planting weather. So there is a lot of uncertainty ahead of this market that down here near multi-year lows. We've got a lot of bearishness digested and very little risk premium built in prices right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Wheat market's been interesting this morning. Okay, we get a second day of China cancellations of SRW wheat, another 4 million bushels. And USDA actually raised ending stocks by 15 million bushels in this report, yet we're higher. Explain that.
Yeah, well, that's a head scratcher. I think maybe again, depending on the close, we push down into new contract lows there a couple days ago, closed higher yesterday. Maybe we've exhausted the selling, and the funds again have a pretty large short position built up across wheat. We got a lot of bearishness built in. We see China cancel wheat 2 times this week. We see European wheat prices tumbling, and yet the market is back up into the middle of this range. So it's possible that's maybe the final exhaustion selling in wheat before the funds have some more short covering. But we have not turned that corner yet. You can't say that definitively yet until we get above, say, last week's highs. Would tell you a little bit more that that's the case. So fingers crossed. Maybe we've seen the worst of the selling, and maybe we exhausted that selling earlier this week on the new contract lows.
Okay, we've said that before though, Chip, so I'll
We
believe it
have.
when I see
Yeah,
it.
and you have to be a little bit cautious about it because every time it's been 6 times in the last 6 months, probably
Yep.
we've tried these reversals and it's failed, and the funds continue to sell it. So it's too early to say for sure that that's the case.
One last quick comment about wheat. The increase in ending stocks came from a decrease in exports by 15 million bushels. I don't think that's any big surprise. What's surprising is USDA didn't do that earlier, but that situation isn't going to get any better here as Russia is now under $200 per metric ton selling in the
Yeah,
market against us.
Yeah, I don't think any surprises there, and the ending stocks number is big. The other thing maybe in the wheat market too is with these what could be looks like maybe the warmest weather in winter in history.
Okay.
There's a lot of wheat susceptible right now to winter kill type situation. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there's plenty of time here that there could still be some cold weather, and so maybe that's why the wheat market's a little bit reluctant to continue to sell off in here. Maybe we're trying to add a little weather premium to that or risk premium. You got several more weeks here where a cold snap in the plains, especially Kansas and Oklahoma, would not be a good situation.
Yeah, and it's likely we have those China cancellations worked in already to price because those were rumored a little bit earlier this week. Just a quick comment on the cattle market. We made new highs for the move, had a little bit of a chart breakout with some higher cash trade this morning, but we failed. Are you concerned about this reversal or what it looks like on the charts?
Well, if it stops here, right, we're kind of mid-session in here. If we continue to tumble and would, close below yesterday's lows or something like that, I think maybe kind of had a bull trap, so to speak, with a breakout to the upside and reversal back down. I think it's too early to tell that, but I think the close is important. I think the outside markets have been a little bit choppy here today as well with some of the economic numbers we had out, particularly the jobs report. So you've had some outside market fluctuations, and the dollar's kind of been a little jittery today. And so again, a little bit concerning. But maybe it's just kind of a Friday correction ahead of the weekend too. I think the close today and the early trade next week will tell more of that tale, whether we can expect further upside or whether that was a bull trap and a reversal back down.
Mm. You mentioned the jobs report this morning and some of the other news this week. The dollar has plunged here sharply as I think a result of that. Obviously, that could be a little bit of what's helping drive the wheat as well. We kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, the dollar has, on the daily charts at least, seen a little bit of a breakout to the downside in here. And I think that has been something that, maybe has caused a little bit of buying interest across the commodity sector. We've got gold at new all-time highs. And so there are some, pockets out there where the funds have been a little more active on the long side. And so maybe, just maybe, if this dollar continues to break, that's what could spur some additional short covering in our grain markets going into the month end here, and that's a pretty important acreage report.
Yeah, it felt like that lower dollar might have been part of what pushed us yesterday, but we'll see here going forward. All right. Thanks so much, Chip Nellinger, Blue Reef
Thanks.
Agri-Marketing. That is Markets Now.